everyone. Figured I'd do a quick video on the economy and debt, U.S. debt, international debt. I just posted a link online about how indebted countries and companies and everybody is right now. So, quick history. The reason debt gets overloaded and the reason you end up with sort of a debt cascade from time to time is due to artificially low interest rates. So, the reason many of the reasons, or one of the many reasons that I think the Austrian school of economics is the only legitimate school of economics, and that is people like Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard, Henry Hazlitt, Friedrich Hayek, Bambavec, and a variety of others. Anyway, the reason they are the only school of economics that has a coherent philosophy on debt and how the interest rates ought to be set by free market principles. So I'm going to try to explain this. This is quite technical, so, if I lose you, consider it my fault, not your fault, because this is hard to explain. But essentially, what the interest rate is supposed to communicate to an economy is how much savings there is in the economy. So the more people want to delay gratification and defer their spending into the future, the greater amount of money they save. And the more they save, the lower interest rates are because there is more money available to loan. And you know that it's safe to borrow at those low interest rates because the low interest rates communicate to you that there's a glut of savings. There's just a lot of savings, which means if you take that money and you borrow it and you build something or invest or grow your business, that the consumers have a lot of money on the other end of that there is a lot of pent-up demand and pent-up savings to buy whatever it is that you're going to produce with this, new investment that you're making. The reverse is also true. If interest rates are very high, that is supposed to communicate that it is not a good idea to borrow and invest in speculative business endeavors because the consumers and businesses have not saved up a lot of capital, which means when it's time to actually sell those goods and services to the marketplace doesn't actually have the money to buy those goods and services because, again, the interest rate is high because there is not a lot of savings to buy stuff with that. So the problem with the Federal Reserve being in charge of money and being in charge of the monetary supply is it essentially fakes the interest rate. The interest rate, rather than being an indicator of how much money is available in the marketplace to buy future goods and services and to what degree the marketplace values, delayed gratification, instead of communicating that, what the interest rate communicates is it's essentially a false signal. So when the Federal Reserve keeps the interest rate down for a long time, as they have for most of the last couple of decades, what happens is businesses and individuals borrow at low interest rates, which normally would not be a problem if those low interest rates were set by the marketplace. If the interest rates were set by the marketplace, it would not be a problem because you would know that there is a excess savings to buy whatever goods and services are going to be produced by that. The problem is when the Federal Reserve inevitably creates inflation, which inflation is always eventually a byproduct of excessive money printing. When that inflation comes, the Federal Reserve has to raise interest rates, otherwise there will be hyperinflation. And when they raise interest rates, now you have an economy that was built on a bunch of debt, anticipating that consumers would have money in the future to buy the goods and services to pay down that debt, but the consumers actually do not have the money saved up because the artificially low interest rate was essentially enticing investments that were not, for which there was not the money there to pay them off. So in the Austrian School of Economics, it's called malinvestment, M-A-L investment. Malinvestment is investment that should not have taken place, but that did take place as a result of the Federal Reserve's artificially low interest rates. And the problem is eventually those interest rates get raised in order to stave off hyperinflation, and then you get a debt cascade of failures of essentially a bunch of individuals and companies failing. So they fail for a couple reasons. I'll explain it a couple different reasons, ways. And all of this is admittedly, a massive oversimplification. So Please forgive the extreme, massive oversimplification, because some of what I'm saying is not perhaps 100% technically, economically accurate, because I'm trying to simplify it to make it more understandable. So the first thing that happens is companies, when they finance, they anticipate a future interest rate in the ballpark or perhaps somewhat above the current rate. So if a company's borrowing and the interest rate goes from, the Federal Reserve jacks interest rates from 0.25% to 5.25%, that is a radical, 40x increase in the interest rate. And when that trickles down into the cost of financing and refinancing, it results in a ton of debt that would have been sustainable at 2 or 3 or 5% interest being totally not sustainable at 8 or 9 or 12% interest. And that results in a lot of companies not being able to carry that debt burden. And obviously that, cascades through the economy, and you get a bunch of companies failing and layoffs and all of that. The other thing that happens on a personal level is, you may not know this, but the bank does not actually have your money. So hopefully that's not new information. The bank does not have your money. The moment you deposit your money at a bank, the bank turns around and loans it to somebody for some business or whatever. Well, as we just talked about, if the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates artificially low, then a lot of those loans that a bank makes math here. So when you deposit $100 at the bank, if their reserve requirement is 10%, again, I'm oversimplifying this, please forgive me, but if their reserve requirement is 10%, that means they're going to loan $90 into the marketplace. And again, I'm going to oversimplify the math there. Well, the bank that the person who they loan the money to is going to deposit that in a bank, who they're going to say, ooh, a new deposit for $90, which is, the 90%. In a fourth bank and loan $63 out to somebody who's going to take that, put it in a bank and loan, $54 and then $45 and then $36 and all the way down. So every single bank, I know the math doesn't add up exactly to that, but every bank is going to do that, where they take whatever deposits they has my money. Well, one, it doesn't. And as soon as it becomes clear that the very first person at the very end of the chain is defaulting on the debt, let's say it's bank number 10, that's way down the line. So somebody comes in and they borrowed money from the bank to buy a lawnmower, and their lawn business did not work out because, everything's tight and everybody's just going to mow their own lawns. So the lawn business doesn't work out, and they notify the to pay bank 9. But the problem is by bank 10 not paying bank 9 now does not have the money to pay bank 8, which doesn't have the money to pay bank 7 or 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. So in order for the very first person who deposited their $100 at the bank to get their money back, bank 10 has to pay bank 9, who has to pay bank 8, who has to pay bank 7, who has to pay bank 6, who has to pay bank 5, who has to pay bank 4, who has to pay bank 3, who has to pay bank 2, who has defaults on a loan. That means all of the banks up the food chain don't have that money. Now, you may be thinking, yeah, but the FDIC insures it, and so everybody will just get their money from the FDIC. Well, the FDIC only has a very small, something like 1% or 2%. Anyway, it's a very small percentage of cash reserves, because the Federal Reserve presumes that the banks will not all fail at the same time. And the banks are all presuming that not everybody's going to need their money at the same time. And all of them are assuming that start falling. So that is happening. The economy, the world economy, the U.S. economy is drowning in debt right now. I mean, just drowning in debt. There's, record high credit card defaults, record high, loan defaults for automobiles, houses, 401ks. People are borrowing against 401ks right now. And all of this is happening when the experts, the talking heads are telling us we're not in a recession, which I think we're going to end up finding out that we actually are in a recession right now. It's just, they always announce those with that, like the publicly traded companies mentioned in the article, the AP article that I posted. But if possible, to have money in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is liquid, Bitcoin is available, and it's an asset that cannot be, inflated away by the government, cannot be borrowed against as long as you're custodying it properly, and it will not be a victim of the debt default cascade that will at some point do a video about it in case it's helpful. So just FYI, and let me know if you have questions. Always here to help. Thanks.